The capital region is blessed with acres of beautiful farmland ready for planting. And while we're known around here for our corn and our hay and our apples, for a brief moment in time back in 1985, we made national headlines for a very different commodity being produced on a quiet Montgomery County farm that out of the blue made a lot of noise in the middle of the night. It's tonight's CBS 6 Rewind, the time the infamous Colombian drug operation called the Cali Cartel set up shop here in the capital region. There's nothing more peaceful than a rural stretch of farmland, but 37 years ago, this spot in Montgomery County exploded into the headlines. A dangerous cash crop wasn't being planted in the soil. It was being manufactured in a lab. Rewind to 1984. A buyer for this 258-acre property on the market appears out of nowhere, saying he wants to start a horse farm. His agent tries to pay the $110,000 asking price with an airline bag filled with small bills. The owner refuses, and eventually a cashier's check and the farm change hands. But instead of a horse farm, the new owner, a notorious Colombian drug lord, set up in our backyard what turned out to be the largest cocaine processing lab in the country.
There was 90 pounds of cocaine right there at that one little place.
Why did no one know what was going on here?
Well, they posted a lot of no trespassing signs, a lot of beware of dog signs, and so we acknowledged their rights.
But the whole world would soon find out when on April 12, 1985, an explosion blew 2 buildings on the property to smithereens.
We did not know about that lab until the fire department arrived and started calling people saying, you better get somebody out here.
The smell of chemicals was everywhere.
It looks like we have a bomb factory. And we got very scared at that time.
Scared with good reason. 235 barrels of highly toxic and flammable chemicals miraculously escaped the flames.
We didn't want to ask too many questions.
Why not?
Well, you never know.
Officials say sloppy work coupled with faulty wiring caused the explosion that blew apart the lab and in the process blew the lid off the illicit drug operation.
Did you see anything suspicious going on?
None whatsoever.
Retired state police and DEA official Dave Lutweiler spent years working the Colombian connection to this area.
DEA was aware that something was going on in upstate New York.
Why here? Because of a crackdown on exporting ether and other drug-making chemicals into this country.
In 1985, a 55-gallon drum of ether that would cost you $400 in the United States would cost you $10,000 in Colombia.
So the drug lords went where ingredients were cheap and a ready transport route existed, here to upstate New York.
A trooper would stop a car at 2 o'clock in the morning from the Bronx or Queens. They had ether bottles empty in the back of the car.
With ether affordable and available, the Colombians brought in 2 duplexes, the gallons of chemicals, and a dozen or so laborers, and avoided any contact with the community.
Get to a rural area. Get to an area where the potential of people smelling the chemicals wouldn't be that great.
By all accounts, the fire in the lab was an accident.
Apparently, it was an electrical fire of some type in the lab where they were cooking the material. They apparently panicked, and they ran.
And if the explosion was unexpected, so were the arrests resulting from it.
There was a Montgomery County Sheriff's deputy found 3 of them walking down a road. You know, the cocaine all over the whole, they were arrested.
Were they burned?
No, I don't think they were. I don't think they were burned. I think they had a lot of residue on them.
The 3 would eventually go on trial for immigration violations, but it would be a couple more years before the drug kingpin, Freddie Aguilar, would be thrown behind bars. Lutweiler says 2 weeks after the Minden explosion, Aguilar had already begun operating a new lab in Virginia.
Yeah, I'd like to be optimistic and say we'd have found it in a month. Maybe it would have been 3 or 4. You don't know.
Did Minden have an effect on the drug trade?
It might have worked for a while, but it blew up on them.
At its height, the Cali Cartel was credited with producing more than 90% of the world's cocaine. A double cross by a top cartel official 10 years after Minden brought that $7 billion a year empire to a crashing halt. Authorities said that the Minden farm alone could have produced $700 million worth of cocaine. And an intelligence expert with the DEA back then estimated it would take 10 to 20 similar raids on a recurring basis to slow down the rate of cocaine being brought into the country by the Colombian cartels. It took years to reclaim the soil from the chemicals that were spilled into it during the fire.